Hi, I'm Mark Davidson, and this is the Four Signposts. This is part 3 of a video teaching series on hidden Babylon and what that last exhortation in Revelation 18:4 means, that God says, "Come out of her, my people," and that it is important for all of us Christians to get. If you haven't seen the first 2 parts, I advise you see them first. So here in part 3, we will now dive into the topic of idolatry. We saw at the end of part 2 that the abominations are idolatry. They are all sins and idolatry. Well, to make the connections with coming out of her in part 5 and with the world idolatry in the end times in part 4, we must better understand idolatry itself. And so we will go through the truths of idolatry and the human heart. I've discovered 6 truths of idolatry, 6, if you will, tenets or 6 rules of idolatry that seem to be universal. And 4 are given here in part 3, and 1 are given in each of parts 4 and 5. They show us these truths that idolatry is everywhere, and we swim in it every day on this earth, and that our world cultures are immersed in it, and there is only one way out. The first truth of idolatry is that the human heart can readily turn any desire into an idol. Now, Tim Keller, in his book, Counterfeit Gods, and I recommend you reading it, wrote, "The human heart is an idol factory." And in my book, Hidden Babylon, I write, "Anything from which we obtain pleasure physically, mentally, or emotionally can be made the highest priority in our lives." In other words, yes, any desire can readily be made into an idol that takes over our life. The second truth of idolatry is an idol can be anything, whether a person, a thing, a concept, or an ideology, or self. Persons and idols of persons can be a spouse, a friend, a lover, or literally a celebrity idol. Things, houses, cars, jewelry, art, smartphones. Concepts, cherished ideologies, such as various isms, religious doctrines, and dogmas. And in the secular world, environmentalism, socialism, etc. And the self, well, pride, greed, lust, need for better self-image. And of course, we can cross these 4 categories to make 6 more categories, such as persons and things combined gives us cherished relics, mementos. Persons with ideologies gives us cult leaders and messiahs. Racism. Persons with self, manipulative relationships. Ideologies with things are like statues, revered in holy books and revered in holy places. Ideologies with self are ministries and megalomania. Self with things are like clothes, food, money. The list of idols that can be created are endless. And as we saw in the last part, there are 50 billion inhabitants, more or less, of Big Babylon the Great. And they have invented innumerable ways to avoid God and serve their own appetites. The third truth of idolatry is that the human heart will always trust, serve, and obey its idols. It'll trust, serve, and obey whatever its idols are. The human heart loves its idols, and that is the basic definition of idolatry. And to love something is to trust it, serve it, and obey it. If you love your wife or husband, do you trust them, serve them, obey them, try to make them happy? Well, as John wrote in 1 John 5:3, this is love for God, to obey his commands. God is saying that to love him is to obey him. And Keller wrote in Counterfeit Gods, an idol is something we cannot live without. We must have it, and therefore it drives us to break rules we once honored, to harm others and even ourselves in order to get it. Idols are spiritual addictions that lead to terrible evil. Like we saw in that last part, in the letter to one of the letters to Timothy, that the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And of course, murder is the ultimate expression of loving one's idols. to serve, to trust, to obey. Motive, of course, in murder mysteries reveals the killer's idol. Another form of murder and serving your idols is abortion. Let's be plain about it. The unborn child in one's womb is killed because the child would interfere with one's plans. In other words, one's idols. Murder is Big Babel's signature crime. In Revelation 18:24, in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who have been slain on the earth. All the blood is found in her. All the murder is found in her. And it's because all the harlots, all the human beings who follow idols, kill for it. Maybe not all people, but all murder is committed by the people who live in the harlot. In Matthew chapter 23, verses 28 to 35, Jesus addresses the Pharisees' desire for murder, which was part of their idolatry. And now in the fourth truth of idolatry, idols lead people into a degree of blindness to reality, wrote Keller in Counterfeit Gods. People become like the idols they follow, in other words, and that includes a degree of blindness to reality. The idols of the nations are but silver and gold, the work of man's hands. They have mouths, but they do not speak. They have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear, nor is there any breath at all in their mouths. Those who make them will be like them. Yes, everyone who trusts in them. That is Psalm 135, verses 15 to 18. Notice that just like them, they do not see, they do not hear, and they will be like them. And we see in the Bible too, idolatry makes humans spiritually drunk, methusko, inebriated. Revelation 17:2 says of the harlot's wine, those who dwell on the earth were made drunk and hypnotized, pharmakia. In Revelation 18:23, a drug-induced euphoria. Your merchants were the great men of the earth, because all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. Another word that's used is insane or mad. Halal, as in Jeremiah. Foolishly boasting or outright mad, insane. Babylon has been a gold cup in the Lord's hand, making the nations drunk. And so Jeremiah 51:7 says, the nations have drunk of her wine. Therefore, the nations are going mad. Now, what do being drunk or hypnotized or insane all have in common? You may not have thought of this, but their commonality is that it dulls our perception of reality. Our perception of reality is impaired. Examples below on the chart there are due to people's idolatry. In other words, buying into a sky-high stock market. People see things soaring all the time, and emotionally it tickles their greed, and they buy into it just in time for it to crash. Scientists explained away creation with myths like evolution, and examples are the bombardier beetle with a gland for one kind of chemical and a gland of another kind of chemical, and when squirted out together, creates fire, damaging the pursuer. How could one gland appear and not the other simultaneously, other than by a creator? Likewise, a few years back, a T-Rex bone was dug up, and it was so huge they had to saw it in half. And the biologist who was overseeing the project noticed soft tissue inside of one of the bones and actually extracted DNA. It was explained away, though, because it's millions of years old, supposedly, and so it couldn't possibly be DNA or soft tissue. Belief in man-made climate change. Is your idol yourself, the human race, that you think you're so great you can affect this planet to some great degree? And of course, belief that some of the most corrupt politicians are good to elect into office. But making politics an idol. Idols distort the way we think and even feel. They distort our reality. So in conclusion, in the four truths we saw so far, the 4 out of 6, Idolatry is in every human heart. You must guard against it. Idols are everywhere. They are everything. Even good things can be idols as well as bad things. And people will trust and obey their idols. That's why people do what they do. Idolatry impairs people's sense of reality, and that is another contributing factor to why they do what they do. So the harlot's real identity opens our eyes to idolatry. The world is full of idols, full of idolatry, and people who are not followers of Christ engage in idolatry all the time. So the 5th and 6th truths of idolatry are next. Thanks for watching, and if you liked this video, please click the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you.